Well, thank you guys for coming out today. And as Linda said, this book that I have coming out in March is my 4th release. I've been working steadily since 2008 when I signed my first contracts. And things just keep rolling along. And we hope that at the end of our reading time, you guys do have questions for us. And especially if you want to talk about the romance genre, which I don't know if you guys are readers of that or not, but I hope so, because like she said, I do love all the happy endings. Well, today I've got the excerpt that I'm going to be reading is from the first portion of the book, so it's kind of early on introductory. We'll be getting to meet the characters. It's not the actual beginning of the story, but it's close to it. And forgive me for my sinus trouble, so you'll have to hope my voice doesn't die halfway through, and I'll have to switch to sign language because I can't do sign language. The book is called Passion and Pretense. It's set in 1820, which is the very tail end of the English Regency time period. It is set in, this book is in Essex. No, wait, this one's in London, sorry. The one I'm writing now is Essex. The heroine, the main female protagonist, is named Penelope Grassmore, and she is a gentlewoman destined to do nothing in her life other than marry well and spend lots of money on frivolous things. And oddly enough, she doesn't really love that idea. She kind of wishes that she had more to look forward to than just that. Her brother, on the other hand, is tired of dealing with her and is just pretty much eager to marry her off to anybody he can and get her out from under his roof. She did appear in one of my earlier books when she was a little bit younger, and she was a troublemaker then, and she's a troublemaker now. And that's one thing I had a lot of fun with, is a recurring character that I especially, getting to age her up a little bit and see how she kind of grew from being a teenager into being a young woman. And that's all, I think for writers, we like to, we get these characters in our head and we enjoy them, and we like to keep them around for a while. So I was glad that I was able to do that with her. The hero of the story is a gentleman named Lord Harry, and he has problems of his own. He is a second son, so the only thing he has to look forward to in his life is getting in trouble for dishonoring his family, and maybe his brother will die and he'll get to inherit. And he, as we find, has a lot of his own problems, and throughout the story we get to know them and overcome some stuff and have a lot of fun. And it involves Egyptian artifacts and all kinds of cool stuff. I will begin early on in chapter 1. Whispers and scandalized murmurs breezed through the ballroom crowd, but Penelope could not hear enough to get the gist of things. She could, however, begin to pick out a few words here and there from the loud male voice shouting over the hushed din. Indeed, things were getting more and more interesting. She ducked under Lady Davenport's enormous bosom and pressed past Sir Douglas McClinty's portly abdomen. No one noticed her, so she kept on, moving slowly toward the front of the room. Mama would surely have a fit, but Mama hadn't seen her so far. She could gawk as blatantly as she liked. "It just isn't seemly, sir," the blustering male voice was saying. "Yes, it seemed a bit unusual to me, too," another male voice said. This was a deep voice, a voice with tone and texture that Penelope was certain she'd recognize if she ever heard it again. It was a good voice, warm and amused, and certain. She could picture the man it belonged to as smiling while he spoke. She could imagine he had a glint of mischief in his eye. She could also tell he was more than a little bit drunk. "But for shame, sir, you had your hand on my wife's arm," the first voice stormed. "No, sir," the second man corrected. "I had my hand on your wife's bosom." The crowd gasped. Someone, most likely the blustering gentleman, choked. The man with the warm, amused voice said nothing, despite all the tumult around him. Penelope decided she simply must get a look at this person. There was a chair against the nearby wall, so she scooted herself to it and hoisted up her skirt. Surely with all the fuss these gentlemen were causing, no one would so much as notice a woman with strawberry ringlets standing atop a chair, would they? Of course not. Up she went, steadying herself by grasping onto the nearby fern, propped securely, she hoped, on a plaster column. Ah, now she could see the men. She easily recognized her host, Lord Burlington, and he appeared much as he usually did, red-faced, jolly, and, well, blustering. The other man was a different story. She drew in her breath. For all his cultured tones and textured warmth, the man appeared very unlike his voice. She expected someone dashing and rakish, someone who lived by his wit and reveled in the stimulation of intelligent conversation, among other things. Someone who appreciated fine spirits and looked down his nose at lesser men. A dandy, even, who was sought after and used to being admired. That was how he had sounded, at least. What she saw when her eyes fell upon him was something quite different. By heavens, but the man was a hermit. He was unkempt, with dirt in his hair and whiskers on his face several days old. His clothes were a disaster. If he'd been dressed for mucking a stable or plowing a field, he would have been only slightly overdone. The man was a positive horror. And now he noticed her. She clutched the fern for support when his eyes locked onto hers. When he smiled, she thought she felt the chair shift beneath her feet. "If you'd let me explain, Burlington," he said to the blustering man, although his eyes remained fixed on Penelope. "I was trying to tell you that you have reached a hasty conclusion where your wife is concerned. I was walking into the room as she was walking out of the room, and we nearly collided. There's nothing more than that." "But you were alone with her. Your hand was on her." "Well, don't think I haven't heard of your reputation, sir." Yes, I dare say everyone has heard of my reputation, and this is hardly going to rectify that, is it? Oh, well, I assure you, in this instance, at least, I am innocent. "Well, I ought to call you out," the first man blustered on bravely. "Well, I suppose I could shoot you on a field of honor if you insist, but I really would so much rather not. My head is going to be bloody ringing enough in the morning as it is." The crowd laughed at that, and the red-faced man went even more red-faced. He seemed to realize he was running out of practical reasons to continue his blustering, but it was obvious he wished to continue. He glanced around nervously, and at last was reduced to giving his disheveled companion a frustrated sneer. "Since my wife would be very much distressed at the thought of a duel, I shall let it go this time." "Ah, Burlington, that's terribly kind-hearted of you. But you watch yourself, man, and do what your uncle sent you to town for in the first place. You find yourself a wife, and leave everyone else's alone." The hermit only gave half a smile at his advice. "Isn't it thoughtful of my uncle to keep all of London so well informed of my endeavors? If your endeavors did not breed scandal and dishonor at every turn, no one in London would give a fig for them. Watch yourself, Lord Harry, unless you really don't wish to live long enough to make use of that title your unfortunate brother will be forced to leave you one day." "You leave my brother out of this, Burlington." "Why, are you ashamed of having a half-wit in the family, sir? Do you wish that his compromised body would just hurry up and die so you can finally make use of that title?" For a moment, it seemed something would explode. The hermit seemed to grow larger. His shoulders tensed, and his expression was harsh and cold. Even from this distance, Penelope could see something raging behind his eyes. But then it was gone. He became calm and amused once more. "Oh, that ruddy title," he said. "I tell you, Burlington, there are plenty of other things I'd very much rather make use of." Again, his eyes fell on Penelope, and for just a moment, she felt as if she might have an inkling of what the man meant. "But I also tell you," he continued, turning back to his grumbling confronter, "your wife is not one of them." With that, the man nodded at those around who still observed their altercation, then gave Penelope a special nod all her own, and he departed. He turned on his heel and abandoned the assembly. Penelope clutched the fern so tightly she was left with nothing more than a handful of tiny green leaves. The dreaded chair was still moving. She was just sure of it. "Penelope!" This blustering screech was her mother's. Penelope started and very nearly fell off her precarious roost. Oh, bother. Of course Mama would appear now and discover her this way. "Oh, hello, Mama," she said, as if standing on chairs in someone's decorated ballroom was perfectly normal.
I thought I saw a mouse. More like a rat, her mother said, glaring in the direction the hermit had gone. You pay no attention to that man, Penelope. Harris Chesterton might be heir to the Marquis of Hepton, but he's hardly fit for polite company. And here you are, balking on a chair? Honestly, Penelope, what can you be thinking? Honestly? Well, she was thinking she'd just discovered the perfect fiancé. Thank you.